Hello and welcome to episode 144 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. I'm your host, Devon Dundee. I'm joined by my co-host, Sigmund Judge. Sigmund, how's your week going?
My week is going good, but I want to say this ahead of time. We are recording on the evening of November 5th, which just so happens to be Guy Fawkes night, and I just so happen to be very near one of the biggest firework displays in London. So if you hear bangs and whatnot, do not worry. Just people enjoying themselves, celebrating this foiled plot to blow up the Houses of Parliament by Mr. Fawkes way back when. And I guess that ties in well with the day across the pond.
Yeah, there are going to be some fireworks tonight or potentially tomorrow, depending on how the counting goes. But of course, as we record, it's election day. Got my live activity poised and ready to go. Everyone's having a debate on whether or not to enable that. But yeah, a lot going on both sides today.
I guess the one good thing about all of this happening is that we can at least be distracted a little bit from Christmas creep. Have you heard of this phraseology before?
Christmas creep. I'm just imagining like Stalker Santa. I don't know. What is this?
This is a new name for this period of time where Halloween's over and Christmas is well and truly everywhere. In all of the shops, the lights in London are shining bright already with the Christmas decorations. I just really enjoyed the name Christmas Creep because it made me think of Radiohead's classic song mixed in with sleigh bells and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you just picked Mariah Carey's new Christmas single, Sigmund. Well, I guess that means we have to answer the question, how do you determine when your Christmas tree goes up? Do you lean into the Christmas creep and go early, or do you wait till later? Do you have a rule?
Christmas decorations, I'll get them up as early as I can, but it's got to be in the month of December, not before.
Oh, okay. See, we have a kind of a convenient break here in the U.S. because we've got Halloween, but then we have Thanksgiving. And so for me, it's always the weekend after Thanksgiving. You know, you're home, you're kind of eating your leftovers and recovering from that day, and that's the time to put the Christmas tree up. So that's like right at the tail end of November, not quite December, but I'd say we're pretty close.
Devon, that's not the only thing creeping up on us, because you just mentioned we're on episode 144 right now, which means that 150 should arrive right at the tail end of this year. We want to do something a little bit special for episode 150.
Yes, for episode 150. I think we did this for 100 as well. We want to hear from our listeners, and we want to talk about what you want to talk about. So send us your questions, whether it's Apple TV, Apple TV Plus, Apple Arcade, that whole world, or I guess just whatever you want to ask us. We'd love to answer them on episode 150. We're going to talk about whatever it is you want to. So send your questions to us via email. It's magic@macstories.net. That's linked in the show notes as well. But get us your questions in early because we're getting to episode 150 very, very soon.
Well, this week is an interesting week when it comes to Apple TV. And specifically, I think, for Apple TV Plus. No new release, Devon. A breather, so to speak, but also no mention at all by the company celebrating 5 years of Apple originals and storytelling. We did that on last week's episode. I expected at least a mention, a sizzle reel or something. What do you think about the decision to let this go?
It's an interesting one. I feel like with Apple, it's always hard to know what they're going to celebrate and what they aren't. I think you and I, just personality-wise, tend to emphasize those anniversaries and dates like that and commemorating things, which I think has its value. But a company like Apple, with so many different priorities, you never know if they're going to go all out, do something big, and redo the whole homepage in honor of something, or if they just let it pass by without so much as a YouTube short. So they decided this particular time to let it go, but who knows? They may do some kind of sizzle reel for the year-end wrap-up or whatever. They like to surprise us. So I think we still got some fun stuff in store, but yeah, for 5 years, I guess we get to take the lead on the anniversary celebration there.
Yeah, I just thought it was a missed opportunity with regard to maybe even ending a supposed sizzle on a clip of Blitz to get everyone hyped for that week. Of course, Blitz currently across theatres, I think in a wide availability.
It's always hard for me to tell because where I live, it has to be the widest of wide availability. I haven't seen listings here, but it's wider than just the limited to the major cities. It's not quite the full one. But I agree with you. I think it would have been cool to commemorate the 5-year anniversary and give a little opening on the next 5 years with Blitz. But again, I guess that's our job, Sigmund, so that's what we'll do. Getting to this week, we've got a lot coming up. We're going to grade our M4 Mac predictions, and we're going to share some soothing up next picks in an otherwise anxiety-inducing week. But we have to start, Sigmund, with some long-anticipated news, a new feature in the new tvOS beta that I know you've been looking out for quite some time. You want to tell us about it?
Yeah. So, Monday night, and I thought, you know what? I've got to check out the beta for tvOS 18.2, the first developer beta. I think by the time you're listening, the public beta will be out as well. In case it isn't, and in case you don't have hardware available, this is one of the biggest changes that was announced initially at WWDC, and we had many, many questions. And that is the introduction of the ability for Apple TV to automatically detect the best aspect ratio for your projector and for your television. We weren't too sure if this was going to be specific to high-end projectors. It seems to be available to a vast array of different displays. And if you do have one of the higher-end projectors, or if you're using an anamorphic lens, or your television's aspect ratio isn't detected automatically, which does happen with some of the lower bandwidth HDMI cables and some of the older televisions, even if they are 4K HDR, users are going to have the ability to manually choose from the following options. We've already heard about 21:9, which is the scope screen cinematic ratio. Of course, 16:9 is what we're all used to. But also, we have options for 237:1, 239:1, and 240:1, which are positioned between the classical CinemaScope aspect ratio and the aspect ratio of modern anamorphic cinematic content. And that means that both are going to be able to match just with only slight deviations. Very, very cool. Then we've got 32:9, which is the ultra wide screen, double that of 16:9. And this is pretty cool because I remember way back when there was a trend to buy these like ultra wide screen OLED TVs. I think they were probably plasma or LCD back then. And I kind of miss those days. So if there is a reason for those to come back beyond, I think, the ultra-wide displays that we see, mainly for gaming, to bring that format back into the entertainment space, I think would be amazing. And then we also have DCI 4K. A lot of people said to me, what is DCI 4K? And what it is this actual resolution of 4096 by 2160. Basically, this isn't UHD, this is true 4K that is able to display this container format defined by the Digital Cinema initiatives in the Digital Cinema System specification. And it is the native resolution of all DCI compliant 4K digital projectors and monitors. So we're talking Christie, we're talking JVC, we're talking some of the higher end Sony projectors. This is going to work perfectly. I've been displaying DCI 4K on my Epson projector, which honestly is an upscaling 4K projector. Still looks absolutely fantastic. So there's a lot that the Apple TV is going to be able to do now. This was kind of one of the things that in the tvOS 17 review last year, when we were comparing formats between what Apple Vision Pro can display and what Apple TV can display, this, I'm hoping, is going to open up the doors for some of the IMAX presentations that we see across the TV app and on services like Disney+. And it really feels like something that in our fantasies we would have included in an Apple TV Pro. This is a pro feature for installers, for enthusiasts. Can you tell I'm excited, Devon?
I really can. I mean, anytime you get to talk about aspect ratios and these specs, I know it's a good day for you, Sigmund, but I was excited. You sent me a video of what this menu looks like and how you can kind of scroll through the different options and see it change and find the one that's perfect for you if your TV doesn't automatically send that information to the Apple TV. And all I could think was, this is the most Apple implementation of this feature ever. Of course, the announcement at WWDC was 21.9, which is probably the one that most people are waiting on for their home theater setups, but they took the extra effort in to not only detect and just automatically select the right one, but to give you all these options and really just make this, as you said, something that professionals will be able to use in all kinds of different really, really high-end setups now, just making that Apple TV even more versatile and even more on, again, the pro end of home theater setups, which is really incredible to see.
Yeah, so a couple of limitations. Well, actually, let's talk about one of the bonus reasons why you would want this, right? So there are a lot of projection systems, and this is why I think Apple really kind of focused the announcement on projection. But there's lots of projection systems out there that have blanking. So basically, rather than having the dead space that you would have at the top and bottom of your screen, where it would just be, black anyway, you will have this kind of masking that masks over that, so you get a pure black, and then you just have the picture that's being projected and no blank space. For people who wanted to do that, who were running Apple TVs beforehand, if they exited out of the film or the show that they were watching and they were back into the streaming app of choice, they would have difficulty navigating some of the menus and some of the search bars because, of course, they're blanked out. This resolves that pain, which is great. Very, very niche. Right now, this seems to be specific for 4K displays. Of course, beta 1, things can change, but I've already heard from a couple of people that have said, my HD projection system doesn't show these features. So that's something to keep in mind there. I think the other thing that's really exciting about this is from a content perspective. Briefly touched on it. Beyond the streaming apps, which of course Apple always have to wait an eternity for them to adapt and adopt to these new innovations, Apple could do some really fun stuff here with what they offer through the TV app.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential here, not only for just the interface overall, but like you said, for adapting to different aspect ratios. And you can see, Apple's always taking technology and innovations that they're putting in other platforms and adapting them and sharing them between teams. And that's what we're seeing, I think, here with all the work that's gone into the aspect ratios on Vision Pro and making that just such a magical experience. Hopefully we'll see that applied here on the Apple TV as well, and really just adapting the output in a way that the user doesn't have to think about it and just gets the ideal viewing experience no matter what they're watching.
Very, very much so. And again, I just think this is a great addition, and this is going to kind of turn the tide once again on people integrating Apple TVs into their really expensive systems. There's a whole enthusiast, hobbyist community there that are there for the picking, and I think this is fantastic. Hopefully next will be offline downloads, but that is not our only news for 18.2, because Just a few hours before we started recording, Aaron Perris, contributor at Mac Rumors, was able to dig into the code and find some really, really interesting tidbits on the new screensavers that are going to be coming to tvOS by the end of the year. I think a pre-Christmas treat at this point.
Yes, I really hope so, because I want to have Snoopy up on my TV when I have everyone over for Christmas. So Snoopy is included in this code, a mention of the screensaver for TV and movies as well, for Apple Originals featuring different scenes from those, as well as a category for music, and one that really surprised me, not one that we've heard about yet, and it's just kind of hidden there in the code, so we'll have to see exactly what comes of it, but soundscapes is going to be a new category of screensavers on tvOS. This looks really interesting. And I think it is a continuation, maybe a little bit of what they've been doing with aerials and bringing aerials to the Mac. And now they're opening up this whole new category where it's going to be, I'm picturing like some kind of immersive experience where you've got this motion on your television, but you also got sound to go along with it. And I'm a big fan of what Apple's done with sound in terms of background sounds on the HomePod and on iOS and iPadOS. And if they could integrate some of those with visuals on tvOS as screensavers, I think that would be really amazing. So I'm excited about this category and a surprise that we'll hopefully get to see in the next tvOS 18.2 beta.
It's really funny. I hadn't even thought about soundscapes in that sense before. I'd thought about it as a visualizer for music because of it being announced right next to music in the article. But yeah, I guess there could be something here for spatial audio, and I'm guessing something close to a favorite of mine, which is dark noise, but something more integrated. And that would be really interesting in a, Dolby Atmos setup as well. So yeah, very, very cool. We've got an exciting month ahead, I think, as more details roll out in future betas, because this is just beta 1. That said, we had an exciting week this past week. A week of presentations, and I say that carefully.
Yes, don't call it an event. It was a series of announcements in the form of press releases and videos, but it was not an event as such. And that brings us to our predictions for last week. We tried to make our best guesses of how Apple would roll out the M4 Macs that we had heard were coming. It was kind of unprecedented. We were doing predictions for an event that had not been announced or any invitations, and it turned out to be really interesting, I thought, and a lot of fun. So we're going to recap our predictions and then anything that stuck out to us about these announcements. So we're going to grade one by one, starting with our 3 regular picks, each worth 1 point. Sigmund, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, there isn't an event. Because it was just a series of presentations.
It was not an event. There were no invitations. It was really cool, though, I think, the way they complemented the press releases with the event-style videos. And you had even said on our recording last week, something I had not even thought about. You said, I'm not saying there won't be a video. I'm just saying there won't be an event. And that was really smart on your part, because that's exactly what we got. We got these 3 videos highlighting the new Macs, and I thought it was very cool.
A pick that I nearly made, which I didn't, was that there would be no Tim Cook.
Oh.
And that ended up being the case because it was John Turnus, head of hardware at Apple, that presented all of these new additions to the Mac family, including, of course, iMac, MacBook Pro, and Mac Mini, which we'll get into in a second, because your first pick was that Apple would announce a new Mac Mini with an M4 chip and a smaller form factor than the current Mac Mini. This was a clever point.
Yeah, this was a spoiler alert, one of my only good picks for this event, but if you're watching the video and not reading the press release, I feel like the videos came out a little bit later than the press releases, so most people probably saw the announcements online first and then watched the video, but the video was a great fake out because John Turnus is standing there talking about the Mac Mini, and there's an M2 Mac Mini on the table, And then it moves out of the way and reveals the tinier Mac Mini, the more mini Mac Mini. It's tiny, it's taller than it was before, but it really does look like the perfect middle ground between the Mac Studio and the Apple TV. And I love the look of this. I love the shape and the way it's going to fit into so many different use cases and form factors now. And a little detail about it that I love so much is that they borrowed the bottom design of the Apple TV for the new Mac Mini and the Mac Studio. It's a connection I hadn't made before until I saw all these comparison photos of the three together, but that curved bottom that lifts the whole thing up off the table for ventilation, as far as I know, that came from the Apple TV, and now it's in two of the most popular desktop Macs, which is awesome.
Yeah, I was absolutely blown away by it. Very, very happy with the form factor. Very, very happy with the idea that they've got two USB-C ports at the front, along with a 3.5mm headphone jack at the front as well. I wasn't expecting that at all. And of course, USB-A is gone from the new Mac Minis, being replaced by free Thunderbolt 4 at the back, unless you spec up to the Pro version, which will get you Thunderbolt 5. Now, we've kind of jumped ahead, but there was something earlier in the week when the iMac was announced with regard to the kind of displays that could connect to. The reference was pulled pretty quickly, but the reference kind of implied 8K at 120 hertz, being able to do that. Now, that's maybe a spec that is just available for Thunderbolt 5, and it's just there aren't any screens that do that yet. I don't even think Thunderbolt 5 was a thing that anyone was expecting either from this event, but pretty big news, especially from a display point of view and the future.
Yeah, most definitely. I think one thing that people are really excited about with Thunderbolt 5 is the higher refresh rate displays, because that's been a limitation that we've talked about often with the Pro Display XDR, is that 60 hertz refresh rate. And maybe this is an implication that the next one will have double that, or at least 90 hertz, which would be amazing. But the display story this week has been amazing, even down to the base M4 chip, which came to the MacBook Pro, is able to power two external displays in addition to the MacBook's display, which we have not seen before. With the M3, you had to close the lid in order to power two external displays. And now you can technically have three that way, which when that comes to the MacBook Air, I think a lot of people are going to be very excited. But if you're someone who goes for that M4 base model MacBook Pro, which is just looking better and better with the addition of an extra Thunderbolt 4 port as well, it's very cool to see. So lots of great news in the world of displays, and I think hopefully this is setting us up for some really exciting updates to Apple's displays before too long. Well, let's talk about RAM for a moment, because this was another big story this week. You had a prediction in terms of RAM, and this looks like a check mark to me, Sigmund. What did you predict?
That new Macs would come with 16 gigabytes of RAM as standard. And my reasoning behind this was it just felt like it was time, but also with the introduction of Apple Intelligence and needing that extra power, it just made sense. I've always said to anyone buying a Mac, if they're going to buy a Mac, always upgrade the RAM. I'm really happy that we're at a point now where you can buy a Mac and really, for the majority of people, they won't have to update the RAM, because these Macs are just getting more and more powerful. When I picked up the M2 Mac Mini, I was a bit gutted because I couldn't really go all out for the Pro, but the Pro was what I wanted for the extra display, but also for that extra power. These Macs, with the introduction of M4 and M4 Pro, are beyond anything I think I'm going to ever need.
They are so impressive. What Apple has done just between the M1 and the M4 really is incredible, and the way that that base model just covers so many workflows now that you would have had to pay so much extra just a couple years ago. And this change in RAM that we're seeing with the M4 is actually retroactive. It's going back all the way back to the M2 MacBook Air that Apple sells now. That starts at 16 gigabytes of RAM for the same price that just a week and a half ago, you would have gotten 8 gigabytes of RAM. So that is really incredible. Any computer that you buy from Apple now is going to have 16 gigabytes of RAM at minimum, which is so impressive. It's one of those breakpoints in the timeline of computing that, with the 16 gigabytes is just going to feel like the baseline in a few years, and it really is incredible to see. Interesting that there is an M4 chip with 8 gigabytes of RAM, but it's in the iPad Pro that came out in the spring, so I guess that decision was made later, or maybe they just decided that for the iPad this time around they were willing to go down a little bit lower. But the fact that it went all the way back to the MacBook Air that starts at $999, I mean, that's just so impressive, and I'd even say generous, honestly.
The decision to upgrade the MacBook Air, honestly, the one thing that's kind of holding it back for me specifically is the screen display technology. Once that gets to the point that the MacBook Pros are now, is a complete non-discussion on what MacBook I'll be getting next.
For sure. And there was a rumor this week that Apple is working on at least 90 hertz for future, I think it was iPad Airs, MacBook Airs, and iMacs, which would be awesome and definitely great to see. I mean, we're just taking steps forward every step of the way. Right now it's RAM, and next it could possibly be display refresh rate, which would be awesome.
The other thing on refresh rates at the moment is actually how low the refresh rate can get for limiting power consumption. So there's 2 different directions that we can go, right?
Yeah, and that's another huge deal in terms of battery consumption, and we saw the iPhone go always on when it could go down to 1 hertz. So I would love to see other Apple products beyond the iPhone and the Apple Watch go always on at some point too. I think that would be amazing to see. Honestly, I wouldn't mind it too much if my iMac could be always on as like a hub with widgets for the weather and different things like that. I think that would be great. But let's talk about the iMac for a minute, because we're getting into the part of the predictions where things start to go downhill for me. I predicted that the new M4 iMac would be available in space gray, which did not happen. I should have been more broad and just said it would come in different colors, because they did refresh the colors. It's all the same names for the colors, but I would argue, especially the pink, looks very different from the M1 version, what we've had before. I think they all look great, and even though there is no space gray, which is what I was hoping for, I'm happy with the colors. I just wish I'd gotten a point for it.
In terms of the introductions to these products, we had a very similar third prediction, and that was to do with spatial video editing and it being shown as a workflow. I think we may have been just a little ahead of time. This is something that I think is probably going to get introduced at WWDC next year, or maybe just slightly before the next Final Cut Pro Summit, maybe, or something early in the year where Blackmagic can really show off their technologies alongside Apple. I think that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I really felt like this was coming. They announced at WWDC that an update to Final Cut Pro was coming by the end of the year for spatial video editing. So in terms of not an event, but a big announcement, as far as I know, this is probably their last chance this year to really do that. But I mean, they could always do their own press release just for Final Cut Pro, which is probably what will end up happening. It just feels like the pieces are coming into place for this. We're going to talk a little bit later about another piece that's falling into place here. But I think that what they really wanted to emphasize with this release was Apple Intelligence. That's the whole thing this year. Each of the 3 videos had a segment on Apple Intelligence, and so that just that was the big software thing that they wanted to emphasize, and there just wasn't room for something like this that seems to be coming soon, but also just isn't quite ready. So neither of us got that point. As it stands at the end of the regular picks round, it's 2-1. And that moves us into our out there picks worth 2 points each. I'll go first. I said that Apple would pitch the Mac Mini as a home media center device, which did not happen. There's been some discussions about it, like just kind of people thinking about the future of that, but there's no like mode that's been added to macOS to make it better, like Front Row or something like that. So you're still working in regular macOS if you hook it up to a big TV. And, I think maybe I was getting a little ambitious there with too much crossing the lines between Mac Mini and Apple TV with the new form factor, I was just I was getting a little bit ahead of myself, I think.
Yeah, and as much as we are futurists, I think my out there prediction was fairly conservative, and yet it still didn't happen. New Magic Keyboard with backlit keys and auto switching like AirPods. Neither of those things happened. I was hoping for at least one of them to get half a point. No, I wouldn't have got half a point, but I was really hoping for something different. I mean, at least everything is USB Type-C now. I have no need to upgrade my Magic Keyboard and Magic Trackpad because I've got a USB-C to Lightning cable that works perfectly fine. And so, yeah, a little bit disappointing there. But I think on the whole, this was a really cool exercise, right? And I really enjoyed having 3 separate days of announcements where we were really able to digest everything that was announced each day. We started with the standard M4, then we went to the M4 Pro, and then we went to the M4 Max. No Ultra chip just yet, and no Mac Studio either. So that's probably something coming later. In terms of the overall presentation, I think, and we've kind of discussed the format of these events presentations, but we've talked about the format before and how, it didn't feel as personable as it had initially. I think the shorter forms work really well still in this format. It still blows me away that this is all now being shot on an iPhone. Now, I do think, kind of looking back at the older events, that the older events kind of look better in a lot of ways when they used traditional cameras. But this is a great proof of concept. And I'd imagine if they were using traditional cameras, they wouldn't have got away with some of the shots that we got to see here. There was one particular shot with the Mac Mini in Apple's new observatory where you don't see any glass reflection whatsoever. And these are the kind of pieces of magic for movie makers where, there will be certain scenes where you think, how come I can't see anything in that big mirror in the room whilst the subjects are talking and I can't see any of the cameras? This was something that's special, that particular shot. But yeah, the lighting in this observatory, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it was a great way to show off that new building, different aspects of it. I loved the accent colors on the furniture matched HomePod colors, which was really cool. And Apple's furniture choices are always top-notch in those videos as well. So I enjoyed this week. It gave every product its own moment and time for people to react. It was really fun to be on Mastodon and Threads as people were reacting to these announcements and just getting to pick apart all the little details together, but then have time to kind of breathe and rest and then jump into the next day and know that something else was coming. Apple even told us the first day, John Turnus said, this is the first of 3, so we kind of knew exactly what to expect and how to pace it. But this was a really fun format. I think they're still experimenting with this October, November time event with what exactly they want it to be. But if they want to continue with this one, I think this would be a great format. And it's always fun when we get just a week of releases and so much to talk about. Now, in terms of our predictions, the way things landed, I scored 1 point, you scored 2. Neither of us got particularly high, but you doubled my score, Sigmund, so you won. Congratulations.
And you know what? Congratulations to everyone, because with this being the final event for this year from Apple, we can look forward to a future event, which I would imagine will introduce the next Apple TV, right? We were expecting it at the end of this year. In fact, I think we were expecting it initially at the middle of this year. Didn't happen. So March just feels like the perfect time. Maybe February via a press release. We'll have to wait and see. And home products as well. So where do we want to start? Apple TV or home products?
Let's start with home products, because we did get A little bit of new information about Apple's upcoming home line from Mark Gurman in his Power On newsletter. We'd heard from 9 to 5 Mac that it was going to be a squarish display, and now Mark Gurman is saying the same thing. He's saying it's going to be about the size of 2 iPhones next to each other. I have to guess that has to be the Pro Max iPhones. I wouldn't think it would be smaller than that, because that's actually on the smaller end of what I was expecting. But at least for this lower end device, the initial one that's not the robotic on the arm, this one's going to be that smaller squarish display on a base that, again, we're all speculating has to be a HomePod speaker, but no one said that for certain. That's just kind of what the common wisdom is, that there would be a base for it that would serve as a speaker as well. But yeah, interesting. It's supposed to be running tvOS, which tvOS is adapting to different screen sizes now, and maybe in preparation for a square format. That's interesting to me, but the more I hear about this, the more excited I get about having a smart home display in my kitchen or on my bedside table. And the fact that it's going to be this totally different form factor that we've never seen before actually excites me as well, because I'm interested to see what they do with it software-wise.
I think it will make more sense when it comes out. And Apple tell the story for this device. I'll be honest that the size of the screen kind of disappoints me a little bit if that is what we end up getting for the first iteration of this product, because I live with older people who struggle with smaller screens. And so we'll have to wait and see how this all kind of rolls on. But from an Apple TV perspective, early next year, I'm just really excited to see what is shown. There's a lot of features within HDMI 2.1 and 2.2 that just aren't implemented yet. And whilst we're not getting 8K in streaming, we are starting to see 8K proliferate through cameras and no doubt the iPhone at some point. Bluetooth 6 could be really, really helpful from a home perspective when it comes to the Apple TV. Of course, we've got Thread radios, we've got Matter support, but Bluetooth 6 would allow for the kind of technologies that we were hoping to get from ultra wideband, right? But this would be just something that would be built into everything, and that would mean that we'd be able to find our remotes really quickly. I think backlit lights on the next Siri remote would be nice. I want to turn this into a wish list. Is there anything that you're expecting or hoping for when it comes to the next iteration of the Apple TV?
Well, I've got a pitch for you, Sigmund, and it's kind of out there, but I've been thinking about this for a couple of weeks now, and I think it could be the case. A17 Pro. They're keeping the chip around for the iPad mini. I had always thought it would be an A18 in the next Apple TV, but what the Pro gives you that the 18 doesn't is ray tracing, which would be huge for the Apple TV. So I don't think they're going to put the A18 Pro in there. I think it's too new, and they don't tend to put the absolute cutting edge in the Apple TV, although of course I'd love to see it. But the 17 Pro, since it's hanging around now and hasn't been axed the way we thought it would, I think that would be a great chip for an upcoming Apple TV 4K with better support for gaming and that ray tracing. I think that would be really awesome on the big screen. So that's what I'm looking out for. I think if we get one in the spring, again, I was shocked to see that it stuck around in the iPad mini, but now that it's still here, I think it'd be great for the Apple TV too.
And that would tie in nicely with maybe a Game Center revamp that we were talking about just last week. Really looking forward to whatever comes next at the beginning of next year. God, we're wishing our time away, Devon. Now, rolling back a little bit, let's talk about this week's news for Apple TV. But I kind of want to start with Apple Vision Pro, because in our beta talk, there was something that we hadn't mentioned, and that was visionOS 2.2 bringing something that we've been waiting for some time. And I was going to mention it earlier, actually, during our discussion of spatial video editing and whatnot, because we've heard from a number of sources that is coming at the end of this year from Apple, but other people at the recent Apple Vision Pro Summit at Apple Park.
Yeah, this is really exciting. Something that if you spend any time on the Apple Vision Pro subreddit, this has been the constant question every time there's a beta update. Is it there? Is it there? Is it there? And that is, of course, the ultra-wide monitor for Mac Virtual Display in Vision OS, and it is finally here in the 2.2 beta. It was announced at WWDC with just, all we got was a photo, really, to see what it was like, and they said it'd be coming later this year. Now you can try it out. You have to download the developer beta for Vision OS 2.2 and the macOS Sequoia 0.2 beta as well. Both devices have to be running the latest developer beta in order to do this. But once you get that up and running, you're going to get options for both a wider version of Mac Virtual Display and that ultra-wide wraparound display, which I've heard nothing but good things about. I've not tried this yet because I haven't updated my Mac to the beta. I'm always a little bit hesitant on those, but, you got to embrace the beta life at some point, so I'll get there. But people are saying it just looks incredible. You can spread out your windows all over that display. It really feels like the best implementation of Mac and Vision OS together. And, for people who don't have those huge displays connected to their Macs, maybe you're using a laptop with just a 13 or 15-inch display, or maybe you've got a studio display. This is even more screen real estate than that, and it's going to be incredible. So, yes, that beta is out, getting really, really positive feedback there. And, yeah, it seems like it was well worth the wait.
I'm looking forward to checking it out myself. I also have not updated to the Sequoia beta on my Mac. One thing I did notice on the current beta for Apple Vision Pro, and I'm pretty sure this isn't a placebo effect of, new software, I'm looking for something that's new. Pass-through. I just feel like every time we get a new update, pass-through is better and better on Apple Vision Pro. I noticed not that long ago between Vision OS 1 and Vision OS 2, I'm able to look at my phone and make out everything on my screen these days. There's something happening with pass-through on this first beta that I genuinely think, and again, I don't know if this is something you've experienced, but it just seems to be steps above the previous release.
I haven't noticed it in this particular update just yet, but that is the benefit of the approach that Apple's taken here, is that they can improve the pass-through over time. And I've always thought it was great from the beginning, but I agree with you, it's getting better and better, which is awesome to see. So yeah, an exciting time to be a Vision Pro fan. And we've got some more Vision Pro news as well, because there's going to be new Vision Pro fans coming not very long from now. The device is actually coming to 2 new regions this month, South Korea and the United Arab Emirates. Pre-orders are now live, and it will be available next Friday, November 15th. So exciting to see it continue to expand around the world, and some new people getting their hands on the hardware.
Now, we spoke about this last week in terms of Vimeo and their embracing of spatial video, right? And this was something that we weren't really expecting, because I think we've been so focused on immersive video and what Blackmagic and Apple are up to with the Cine Ursa immersive coming, I'm guessing, any month now. Canon, though, their spatial video lens, the RF S7.8mm f4 STM Dual. Don't you love those names? It's now available for pre-order. The dual lens costs $450 and will be released on November 14th. Again, really interested to see what people do with spatial video and that format ahead of, immersive video, which obviously shooting in immersive video is just not going to be accessible for a lot of people right now, but there might be some fundamentals that can carry over. And it's going to be interesting to see what the quality is like with that bigger sensor from the Canon cameras.
For sure. It's great that you can record spatial videos with your iPhone, and for a lot of people, that's how they're going to get their start. But this is that next step up, and it's not cheap by any means, but if you're investing in your setup and really see this as a future for your career as a filmmaker, I think this is attainable and something that's going to make spatial video capture and editing a lot more accessible to people. And I'm excited to see what creators do with it. And again, it's just a whole new format, so there's all kinds of creative storytelling that can be done, and it's exciting to see it getting out into the world very, very soon.
I think it's been a really interesting rollout. It's crazy to think that Apple Vision Pro only launched in February, right? And it feels like something that's just so familiar. And of course, we talked about it so much. We've talked about the good stuff, but we've also talked about what we perceive to be missteps along the way. One of them being Apple's reluctance to bring out like a top strap that would pair with the Solo knit band. Now, on the very first demos, that was the band of choice. I think purely for aesthetic reasons when it came to demoing to customers, and that caused a few issues. It was interesting that like in the early demos, pre-release, and even in developer sessions, Apple were using a combination of a band that went over your head and the Solo knit band. Well, now in Apple stores is Belkin's rendition of that top band to offer support. Really interesting rollout this week. Because, of course, reports came out on Monday that Belkin's version of this top band was available for pre-order and for purchase. I actually purchased one on the Monday, went to pick it up from the Apple store, and as they scanned my code, they said, "We're really sorry, but we can't give it to you. There's been a block on the system. That means we just cannot give it to you before November 8th. But if you buy it online, then it will be delivered on Wednesday, and there aren't those restrictions there." So I kind of left a little bit befuddled. I ordered one online for delivery. And then this morning, I got a phone call from the kind people at my local Apple store who said, things have been sorted out. We had to have a couple conversations with Cupertino to see what was going on there. And there was a mix-up somewhere along the way, and you are now able to pick up your order. So I have tried this new band, the head strap for Apple Vision Pro from Belkin, and it's great. I think if you're really into using the knit band, this adds the extra support that I got experience of early on pre-release. But I think if you're used to the dual loop already, then you'll probably be happier with that, in all honesty. Especially if you're not necessarily sharing it with guests too much. The bonus of that knit band is the way that you can easily adjust it by just twisting that knob on the side. Very, very cool. I've decided that I don't need this. It was good to try it out, and I think this is a very, very personal thing, and that is one of the things about this product in general. Preferences are going to vary wildly. But yeah, there's lots out there, and I want to keep trying these different bands.
I'm curious, what was the installation like to actually put it on? Does it wrap around the sides, or like how does it attach?
So yeah, there's these two bits of quality plastic that just slide over part of the Apple Vision Pro where the speakers are, just before that connection there. If you've ever installed or looked at how the developer strap is installed, there's no taking apart, but just over that part there where that does connect is where they slide onto. And yeah, just nice and easy. Then you put it on the knit band and you're done.
Very cool. I use the dual loop. The knit band just doesn't work for me comfort wise, but it does look cooler. And I mean, that is an aspect of the device. I mean, especially you're going to be wearing it in front of people. You want it to look cool. So I'm tempted to try this out just for aesthetic reasons to see if I can get the Solo band to work for me, but we'll see. You make a good point about the not having to adjust the band when you put it on. I think that's so important. I never touch the straps on my dual band because I know I'm just going to mess it up if I do. So yeah, definitely don't want to mess up once you get that right fit, but it's great that this is another option for people. I know a lot have been asking for this since seeing it at WWDC. And it's great that Apple is allowing Belkin to sell this officially in the Apple Store as another option for people who want to use that Solo band on the Apple Vision Pro. Let's talk about software for a little bit. This is actually kind of dual Apple TV Vision Pro news. VPN app Proton made its way to tvOS last week, allowing users to access content from other regions on their favorite streaming services. It's also now compatible with Apple Vision Pro. So if you're a Proton user, or if you're interested in trying them out for VPN, they're now available on both platforms as well. It's cool to see new VPN still coming to Apple TV after it was added last year to tvOS 17, and unlocking all these features, and especially the region locking stuff. It's great to see that coming.
This week's App Stories star, Mr. Jonathan Reed, of course, also occasionally a co-host on this very podcast. Let us know about something rolling out on Amazon Prime Video, AI-generated X-ray recaps, which offer summaries of TV seasons, episodes, and segments to allow viewers to quickly catch up when streaming. Recaps are available now in beta for Amazon MGM Studios original series on Fire TV devices, with a wider rollout to more devices planned for later this year. I was initially really excited about this, and also a tad bit worried because, of course, Apple TV Plus now available on Amazon Prime Video. What I didn't want was Amazon to have the ability to potentially spoil episodes and seasons for people with this feature, but it seems that this is specific to Amazon originals, as is Insight with Apple TV originals introduced earlier this year. But X-Ray is a massive feature, and this is a great expansion to it.
Yeah, this is interesting. I share your nervousness about spoilers, and they say that they've put some guardrails on it to prevent that from happening, but I would just hate to ask an AI to help me catch up, and then it tells me what happens in the next episode. That would be unfortunate. So I hope those guardrails are well established, but I'm always going to lean towards the more human-made recaps. I love Apple's recaps for seasons as the shows are returning. I think they call them actually useful recaps sometimes, which is just great. And I'm waiting on the one for Silo. I can't wait to see what they do with that one. So this is a good fill-in. It's great for personalizing. If you stop in the middle of a season or in the middle of an episode, it can catch you up very easily there. But I think I'm going to be relying on the official human-made ones for the most part going forward till we see exactly how well this is implemented. In other news, Peter Stern, the former vice president of services at Apple, who was involved with Apple's push into sports rights and the launch of Apple Fitness Plus, has been named the new CEO and president of Peloton. Peloton, a company that we don't talk about too much here on this show, but it's had a really interesting history since the pandemic started. Really had a boom and then has just had trouble following that up with any success, unfortunately. And I think if anyone can turn the ship, though, it's Peter Stern. I mean, he has a lot of my confidence just in terms of the work that he did on Apple Fitness Plus. I mean, that service continues to go strong and really has just a special place in my heart for what it's done for me and just making fitness accessible to so many people. So seems like the right person for the job, and wishing him all the best as he takes on this new role.
It's interesting to me, I think, because there were rumors many, many times about Apple possibly making an acquisition of Peloton, right? That didn't come to fruition. I think mainly due to some of the hardware issues that Peloton ended up having with, I think there was one particular horrible incident that I remember being reported about a child getting trapped in one of their devices, and there just not being safety guards there. I do wonder, though, from a services point of view, whether Peloton and Apple Fitness Plus could integrate in some way. We've seen how accessible Apple Fitness Plus is today, especially with, the lack of a need for an Apple Watch. Of course, you're going to get the best experience with one, but just being able to pair an iPhone and have that do some of the basic measurement is pretty out there. But I wonder if there's a possibility of going the other way now, where you see Apple Fitness Plus integrate with some of these products leaked. And there were rumours many, many years ago about Apple possibly getting into that space. I just wonder if there is something more to this other than someone that's been so successful at Apple taking on another role at another place, because they are so intrinsically linked, and they have been for a long, long time.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to imagine there's probably some friendliness there. You know, he knows all the people back where he came from, and so if there's any conversations to be had, I feel like that would at least start them off on the right foot. We've seen Apple Fitness Plus team up with Planet Fitness, so there's openness to those kinds of integrations and things like that. So yeah, it would be cool to see, and I think anything to get Fitness Plus in front of more people and its accessible approach to fitness in front of more people is great and something I would love to see.
Now, all of that talk of fitness, I'm already feeling quite worn out, Devon. Shall we kind of slip back onto the couch and talk some Apple original news? And I guess we're going to start with some sad news and the return, possibly, of a curse.
Yes, be careful anytime we speak too positively about anything on this show, because we we tend to like things just before they die, which is very sad. But Sunny has been canceled and will not return for a second season on Apple TV+. We talked about the future of the show when we did our recap of it. We talked about how we really wanted to see what happens next because it ended very much on a cliffhanger, and unresolved storylines abounded there. And honestly, I thought this one was pretty sure to be revived and brought back for a second season. And yeah, that just goes to show how good my instincts are in that area. But yeah, it's unfortunate news. We won't be seeing the return of Sunny on Apple TV+.
And I guess like a sad week overall for Rashida Jones, of course, her father passing earlier this week, the great Quincy Jones, who has also had some involvement on Apple TV+. You'll be able to find him on at least a couple of documentaries in the library. Hopefully there will be one in the future celebrating his talents, a suggestion there for future originals. Apple has officially announced the not-so-secret sequel to Apple original film The Family Plan, currently in the works. We've mentioned this a couple of times, Devon, and we're going to mention this many, many times again. I can see how excited you are. Now, of course, we're going to see the entire main cast returning. That's Mark Wahlberg, Michelle Monaghan, Zoe Colletti, and Van Crosby, alongside director Simon Kellen-Jones and writer David Cogswell. The movie is going to follow the Morgan family on a European Christmas vacation where Dan's past continues to haunt them in unexpected ways. I just remember the finale of this first film, and I'm kind of wondering how they could possibly top this. But yeah, European vacation and Christmas vacation combined with action with Mark Wahlberg.
I mean, what could go wrong here? Obviously, this film must have done well for Apple, and I'm happy to see it. I enjoyed it. You know, it's broader in appeal than a lot of the Apple original films that we've seen, but you've got to have those kinds of entry points for people to get them into the service and get them to check out the more prestige stuff. So happy to see this sequel officially announced, even though we could kind of heard through the grapevine that it was coming.
You're going to have to wait a year for this to release.
Yeah, that's true. I guess if it's a Christmas film, then we're probably looking at December 2025. But, you know, something to mark the calendars for and look forward to. And, yeah, we'll have to be patient. Something else we're going to have to be patient for, apparently, is Season 2 of Presumed Innocent. When it was renewed for a second season with what Apple was describing as a new case, we speculated what exactly that could mean, given where the season ends and the fact that it was based on Scott Turow's book of the same name. But now we have some more details about the series' future, courtesy of Deadline, because Apple has acquired the rights to adapt Joe Murray's upcoming novel Dissection of a Murder for Presumed Innocent's second season, taking the series down the anthology route. The book is scheduled to be published in the spring of 2026 and follows defense attorney Layla Reynolds, who has just been handed her first murder case. She's way out of her depth, but the defendant only wants her, And to make matters worse, her husband is the prosecutor. Soon, Layla is fighting to keep her own secrets buried too. So, Layla's got a lot going on here. This sounds very much like the kind of convoluted plot that we saw in the first season of Presumed Innocent that just made for such great TV and really hooked people, and all these complicated relationships and connections tied in with this murder case. I thought it was awesome. So this very much feels like keeping in the same vein. But what catches my eye is that spring of 2026 publication date. So Apple's got the rights to the book, but at one point, will they even really be able to go into production with this if the book doesn't go into publication until early 2026? I don't know.
Well, we talked about this again not that long ago. The last thing he told me, season 2, same kind of situation. And I pitched the idea for TV Book Club.
Yes.
And this is the second title. Maybe we'll do that once a year. TV Book Club.
I love it. I think if Apple doesn't do it officially, we just should do it on the show as a bonus segment or something. I think it's awesome.
Absolutely. Okay. Oh, that's something we promised now.
You're welcome. Well, that's the news for this week, but now let's talk about this week's Apple TV releases. Today sees the penultimate episode of Where's Wanda, a show that, Sigmund, I can't get enough of. Week to week, I just get more and more hooked by the mystery that they've been weaving on Where's Wanda, and I'm just loving it. We also see new episodes this week of Shrinking, Midnight Family, and You Would Do It Too. Then tomorrow, we see this month's Apple Arcade releases. Really exciting batch of releases this month. Wheel of Fortune Daily, Drive Ahead Carcade, Arkanoid vs. Space Invaders Plus, and Texas Hold'em Poker Pokerist Plus. Sigmund, I think you're really excited about one of these releases. Which one sticks out to you the most?
I mean, Arkanoid versus Space Invaders Plus. I said I want something that I can play that's going to be a score chaser with leaderboards that I can compete on. That's why I play games. I like games I can pick up and compete on. We had a couple of rounds of the Nickelodeon tennis title back in the day. SpongeBob was not a good pick for me. Completely useless tennis player. But yes, Arkanoid versus Space Invaders Plus. Really looking forward to this. But also, because of the daily aspect of this, Wheel of Fortune Daily. I just feel like this is something I'm going to pick up a few hours ahead of you. You're going to see my score, and you're going to have to try and beat it when you wake up, and we're going to have an ongoing battle there. Oh, most definitely. We've talked before, I'm not the most competitive person in the world, but one thing I am competitive at is Wheel of Fortune. I hate it when the contestants on the game beat me to the puzzle. I get so frustrated. I become a different person when Wheel of Fortune's on the TV, Sigmund. I can already see the fire in your eyes just talking about it. Yeah, so I'm excited for this. We'll definitely be competing on that one and seeing who can get the highest score on Game Center, which I'm excited to start on that one when it releases tomorrow. Finally, on Friday, we've got the finale of Disclaimer, the penultimate episode of La Maison, and a new episode of Before, your favorite Apple Original series, Sigmund. I actually got some direct feedback from a friend from last week's episode who told me he loves Before, but didn't like Severance. Oh, wow. Which is interesting. So I guess there's something for everyone here. It's one of the things that I learned very, very quickly doing this podcast. There was an interview that I conducted with Confidence from Little America early on, and he told me the most amazing thing to him on Apple TV Plus at the time, given, we were like 6 months into the service, was Amazing Stories. And that's just proof that there's something for everyone, and not everyone's going to have the same interpretation. And, that's why I think we try and be careful on the podcast, because we don't want to put anyone off, but we try and be honest at the same time. So, yeah, that's a big, big week. Of course, more MOS as well, but we have some extras that I want to get into very quickly. Shrinking, with Brett Goldstein on his challenging role in Season 2. I don't know, is it still too early to talk about his role? I think the way this video is titled, I think they're trying to avoid it, so we probably should as well.
But one thing that we can spoil is he has to shave his beard for the show. Something he talked about being very emotional for him. And I think that's just the start of the depths that this role really goes to.
Yeah, very much like the upcoming film All of You, which I've seen, where it's like 50 shades of beard. It's incredible how quickly he can grow it.
Wow.
So, shocking to see a clean-shaven Brett Goldstein. Of course, we also have extras for Disclaimer on chapters 5 and 6 with Kate Blanchett and Alfonso Cuarón, and Hayone on the downfall of Catherine and Trauma and Truth. And whilst there are reviews already out for the second season of Silo, we don't want to ruin it this early. But if you do want a taster, you can check out the Season 2 sneak peek. That is the first 5 minutes of Season 2. And if this sneak peek is anything to go by, we have quite a thrilling season ahead.
Most definitely. I can't wait to dive into Season 2 of Silo, which is going to be one of our big topics of discussion next week. Over the coming week, Sigmund, what do we have to look forward to in terms of TV app highlights outside of Apple TV+.
Well, we have quite the packed week this week. Starting with In the Summer on PVOD. This is Alessandro Lacarraza's film, which follows two sisters, Violetta and Ava, as they spend 4 pivotal summers with their father Vincent in Las Cruces, New Mexico. The film captures their journey from adolescence to early adulthood as they explore family, personal identity, and their Mexican-American heritage, and the fluid sense of what is home. This won so many awards in the festival circuit. The trailer looks amazing. I've already got this queued up, ready to watch later on this week. Very much looking forward to it. Then on Thursday, we have My Old Arse. Very different. This is on Prime Video. It's Megan Park's quirky coming-of-age comedy starring Maisie Stella as Elliot, a spirited young woman who, on her 18th birthday, encounters her 39-year-old future self, played by Aubrey Plaza, during a hallucinogenic experience. So, looking forward to checking that one out for some laughs. And then, moving away from feature films, on Thursday sees the debut of The Day of the Jackal on Peacock, with the Jackal being an elusive assassin who makes his living carrying out hits for the highest fee. He soon meets his match, though, in a tenacious British intelligence officer who tracks him down in a thrilling cat and mouse chase across Europe. And then on Tuesday, something to look forward to, Look Into My Eyes. This is a documentary from A24 about a group of New York City psychics who conduct deeply intimate readings for their clients, revealing a kaleidoscope of loneliness, connection, and healing. And finally, Megalopolis on PVOD. This is Francis Ford Coppola's latest, which explores genius artist Caesar Caitling as he seeks to leap the city of New Rome into a utopian, idealistic future, whilst his opposition, Mayor Franklin Cicero, remains committed to a regressive status quo, perpetuating greed, special interests, and partisan warfare. And this is one that had a bit of a controversial rollout due to some of the early promotional material. There was a really strange trailer that released that wasn't approved by Francis Ford Coppola, which almost was a mockery of the film. Very, very strange, but this is one that I've been looking forward to. Didn't get good reviews at all, but it's Francis Ford Coppola, so that name still means something in this day and age. So they are my TV app highlights for this week. Plenty to bunker down with. Of course, a heavy week in the real world outside of our screens, and plenty of reason to kind of get away from some of the newscasts that will be so tempting this week, but there's plenty of reasons to divert from that. And with that in mind, this week's Up Next picks are themed. They are relaxing picks. These are the things that we like to watch just to kind of get away, have a bit of lightheartedness, and just slip into with a blankie.
Yeah, I love that image, Sigmund, because that's exactly what I want to do sometimes, and I think that's something that I probably should be doing the rest of today, trying to, kind of keep myself from focusing too much on the news and not get sucked into everything that's going on. So for my pick this week, I wanted to choose something that didn't make me think at all. I tend to gravitate towards films and TV shows that leave me at least with something to think on, and I purposely picked something this week that has no elements of that, and that is, for me, The American Office. This show, it's comfort television in the truest sense. It's one that I can turn on. Doesn't matter what episode, any episode, I could turn on. I can just turn off my brain for 22 minutes, and I can know that I'm going to laugh, that I'm going to feel like I'm among old friends, and that I can just enjoy myself and not worry about anything in the world. And so that's my show that I go to when I need something like that, and it always delivers. I've been kind of reliving the show with the Office Ladies podcast, which actually just finished their watch through last week. They finished the finale after 5 years of recapping the show, which is really awesome. It's one that I've been meaning to just sit down and start rewatching. So I think that today might be the perfect day to start that. I'm going to pull up Peacock, start watching, and I may even watch some of those extended fan versions that they've had on Peacock for some time and have extra footage that I haven't ever seen before. So if you want to laugh, if you want to just turn your brain off for a little bit, why not join Michael Scott and the cast of The Office for some romps and really just kick back and relax. That's my suggestion anyway.
The American Office. I will just say the British Office, which was first, just as good, if not better. And the Australian Office, which is currently airing at the moment. If you can find a way of watching that, I've heard very, very good things. There's been so many different iterations, but this one's been quite the success over that side of the world. I'm actually going to pick something that's actually a bit of a recent discovery for me, because I'd first off never heard of the service that this is coming from, and I'd never heard of this concept. It is called Game Changer, and it's on a service called Dropout, which I believe was originally College Humor. Great service, but this is Sam Reich, who hosts a game show with ever-changing rules and challenges. And by that, I mean he introduces the people that are going to play the game, and he asks them, well, you know what the game's all about? And they go, well, no, we don't. And he said, yep, that's part of the reason why we play this game. Every episode is a different game, and they don't know the rules until they start playing the game. And there's been all sorts of different things. There's been Sam Says, which gets quite wild because some people follow things that Sam didn't say, but then Sam Reich did say, right? And then there's versions of Sam on a screen that aren't him, voiced by other people, and so there are tricks. And it is mind-bending fun. It's just so well done. The personalities involved is just great. There's animation in this show as well, where there'll be moments of, right, say something, do something that we're going to set an animation to, and they pitch it whilst doing it live, and then the animation's added in post. Just crazy stuff going on here. There's one where they have to find the buzzers before they can press the buzzer to answer the question, and they're dotted all over the place. There's a karaoke episode where they impromptu sing a song that they only know the title of, and they only know the style and artist that they're supposed to sing of to get past copyright and that kind of thing. It's incredible stuff. So that is my recommendation. Recent discovery from me. There's even some video games that are span off there that are hosted by Dropout as well, that spin off from the show. There's an episode that's kind of based loosely off of The Circle on Netflix. It's crazy. So yes, game changer on Dropout. You can have so much fun. It's a blast. And there's 6 seasons of it to catch up on.
I'm having fun just listening to you describe this show, Sigmund. This sounds right up my alley. I have to say, game shows are the other type of TV that help me relax in addition to sitcoms, because you get so focused on what's happening that you really can't think about much else. And so, yeah, I love that, and definitely one to check out. It also sounds like a really fun show to work for, like to be coming up with the games. They has to be an awesome group of people behind the scenes as well. So a great pick and a new service to check out, which I'm sure there's lots of other great stuff on there as well. So whole new world to explore. Well, that's our show for this week. Of course, we want to thank everyone so much for listening. We appreciate you. We also always appreciate hearing from you. You can contact us on social media via the links in the show notes. You can email the show or send us an iMessage to magic@macstories.net. As we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we're coming up on episode 150, and we want to hear your questions. So if there's something that you want us to discuss, be sure to send that question to magic@macstories.net. We would love to include that in our Q&A episode 150, here in just a few weeks.
We'll be back next week with the sophomore seasons of Silo and Bad Sisters, and we'll take a look back at Disclaimer and so much more from the world of Apple TV. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade. We'll see you next week.